Sam's parents had gotten a divorce when he was little, and this had a massive impact on his life. He was forced to live with his mother, and she actively tried to keep him from contacting his father when the only thing he wanted was to spend more time with his dad. But before we start, make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. When Sam finally turned 18, he knew it was time to take revenge on his mother. With his dad's help, he confronted her with an eviction notice. She froze when he said, "Dad sends his regards." Soon he would realize that he had made a huge mistake. "Sam, no. You're making a terrible mistake," his mother exclaimed as soon as she understood what was happening. "You can't trust him. You have to believe me." She tried to convince him, but Sam wouldn't hear it. He just slammed the door shut in her face and locked it from the inside, making sure she'd never be able to get in, even if she had a key. She knocked on the door a few more times and begged Sam to open up and let her back in, saying, "I promise I'll tell you the truth this time." But it was of no use. She finally picked up the bags and slowly walked over to a bench on the side of the road. There she called her sister Rhonda to tell her what had happened. She heard her sister's voice through the phone. "Hey, what's... Ron, you won't believe this. He did it again, that bastard. I'm going to kill him." She interrupted her sister right away, and she was already bawling. Rhonda, of course, had no idea what she was talking about. "Wait, Mel, calm down, all right. What happened? Are you okay?" her sister asked. "No, I'm not okay. He's taking Sam from me. My sweet Sam," she cried into the phone. Melanie had tried calling Sam a couple of times already, but he didn't pick up. Luckily, her sister quickly arrived, and half an hour later they were sitting inside her kitchen, talking things through over a warm cup of tea. Melanie silently nodded, but she was obviously still very upset. Her sister carefully chose her words when she told her, "I think it's time for you to call Mark." "Yeah, you're probably right," she finally replied. She hadn't spoken to Mark in years, and there was a very good reason for that. He was a manipulative liar, and he always tried to win Sam over. Melanie and Rhonda quietly sat at the table as they listened to the beeping sound in Melanie's phone. She'd put it on speaker, so Rhonda would be able to hear everything Mark said. "Hello, Melanie. How are you doing today? I bet you've had better days, huh?" Mark chuckled, and Melanie's face twisted with rage. "Mark, you nasty bastard! How dare you do this to him, to your own son?" Mark just laughed and said, Well, I'm sure he'll manage somehow. I'll send him some money and that should keep him busy for a while." "I see you haven't changed at all. You're still the loving and caring father that he's been looking for his entire life," Melanie snapped back. "I wish we had recorded that call," Rhonda sighed. Luckily for Melanie, her sister was always going to be by her side no matter what. She was determined to help her fight her shitty ex-husband and win back her son's trust and love, but they just needed to think of a plan. Anyway, they were not going to give up just yet. Melanie's determination crystallized into action as she sat across from the lawyer, her documents and timelines spread out like a battle map. The lawyer listened intently, occasionally interjecting with a question, his pen scratching notes that would form the foundation of their legal strategy. As Melanie recounted the years of manipulation, a plan began to take shape, one that would require gathering every scrap of evidence she could lay her hands on. She remembered the control, the lies, and the slow chipping away of her self-esteem. It was in these moments, recounting incident after incident where Mark's negative influence on Sam had left its mark, that Melanie found her resolve hardening. The following day, Melanie and Rhonda turned the study into a command center, poring over years of emails and texts. They unearthed a trail of Mark's manipulative tactics, each message a veiled threat or a calculated play for Sam's affections. With Rhonda's encouragement, Melanie started recording these conversations, compiling a dossier of personal accounts. This narrative of turmoil, supported by the voices of those who had seen Mark's true colors, became the emotional evidence that might help Sam see the truth. With a newfound sense of urgency, Melanie tapped into her old network, reaching out to friends who had been sidelined over the years due to Mark's divisive tactics. Next, Melanie took a deep breath and dialed numbers she hadn't touched in years, those of Mark's own relatives. The conversations were awkward, the years of estrangement hanging heavily between the lines. But as Melanie spoke her truth, she found unexpected allies among those Mark had pushed away. His sister, his cousin, even his elderly aunt shared stories of estrangement, painting a picture of a man who severed ties to maintain control, further bolstering Melanie's case. In a quiet office, the lawyer listened carefully to Melanie's narrative, interlacing legal expertise with her heartfelt accounts. They needed to plant seeds of doubt in Sam's mind, hoping they would grow into the truth. Just as Melanie's resolve was fraying at the edges, a figure from her past re-emerged. Tom, an old friend who had fallen out with Mark over undisclosed disagreements. Seeing Melanie's plight, Tom reached out, offering the kind of support that comes from understanding the adversary all too well. He had his own scores to settle with Mark, and in Melanie's fight, he saw a chance for his own brand of redemption. Over coffee, he unfolded tales of Mark's past. He spoke of Mark's skillful manipulation of people's trust, a pattern of behavior that Tom now recognized as sociopathic. These revelations shed a glaring, uncomfortable light on the dark corners of Mark's motivations. In his willingness to assist, Tom provided more than just accounts of Mark's past. He provided documentation, emails, and recorded conversations that he'd kept as insurance against Mark's betrayal. These documents were substantial, the kind that could change the course of legal proceedings, that could influence a custody hearing, or even sway the hardest of hearts, like Sam's. It was evidence that Melanie could wield to great effect. A mutual acquaintance, knowing of Melanie's quiet vigil, later found Sam amidst the graduates. In hushed tones, they mentioned his mother's presence, noting her pride and unwavering love. Sam's reaction was unreadable, a flicker of surprise perhaps, or confusion. The seed was planted, though, the idea that Melanie's absence in his life was not from lack of care or interest. The letters kept arriving, each one finding its way to Sam's mailbox, left unopened, stacked in a corner of his room. Yet the sheer number began to pique his curiosity. His name, written in his mother's familiar handwriting, a steady stream of silent communication. What did she have to say? Why keep writing if not out of genuine care? These unspoken messages in the margins of his daily life began to resonate with Sam, igniting a flicker of intrigue about his mother's silent words. Sam began to stumble upon small yet glaring discrepancies in Mark's recounting of past events. At dinner, a slip of the tongue, a mismatch between what Mark had always claimed about his post-divorce life and the reality that now unraveled. These inconsistencies sparked the first flickers of doubt in Sam's mind. The stories he'd grown up with, the foundation of his allegiance to his father, began to show cracks. And with each crack, a difficult question surfaced. Had he made the right decision? The inconsistencies piled up, and Sam noticed other, subtler signs. Mark's temper flared when Sam asked too many questions or probed too deeply into topics Mark wished to avoid. There was a cold calculation behind his father's warm smiles, a practiced ease in changing subjects. The facade of the caring, wronged father that Mark had always presented to Sam was starting to crumble, and behind it lurked something less familiar, more unsettling. Melanie's lawyer, diligent and thorough, unearthed evidence of fraudulent activity hidden within the labyrinth of the divorce settlement. It seemed Mark had siphoned funds, obscured assets, and falsified accounts, all to sway the settlement in his favor. Sam, once insulated from the ugly truths of his parents' divorce by youth and Mark's careful manipulations, now faced a reality that demanded reevaluation. Sam's suspicion took root, growing with the uncomfortable understanding that his father's version of events had been a carefully constructed illusion. As Sam sifted through the information and the stories from his mother's allies, the echoes of truth grew louder, impossible to ignore. The man he had seen as a victim, his father, now emerged as the architect of their fractured family. With a mounting sense of urgency, Melanie and her attorney began to compile a robust case. Mark's true intentions, laced with venomous undertones, were laid bare. In the silence that followed the storm, Sam's thoughts turned to Melanie. With the scales fallen from his eyes, he found himself yearning for the truth she held, the connection they had lost. It was this yearning that propelled his steps toward her, seeking answers, solace, and understanding. Upon reaching Melanie, Sam was overcome with regret. The walls he had built, the harsh words he had spoken, all seemed petty in the face of reality. He stood before her, a maelstrom of emotions churning within, and uttered an apology that was both a plea for forgiveness and a cathartic release. Melanie received Sam's apology like a balm to her long, aching heart. There was no hesitation, no "I told you so," just an open-armed embrace that enveloped him in the warmth of unconditional acceptance. They held each other, mother and son, in a silent acknowledgement of the pain and love that had persisted through the storm. Melanie shared the accumulation of evidence, the years of subtle manipulation, the financial fraud, and the emotional warfare Mark had waged. With hearts open and defenses down, Melanie and Sam embarked on the tender journey of reconciliation. They spent time together, sharing stories, revisiting old memories, and creating new ones. As days turned into weeks, Melanie and Sam stood side by side, looking towards a horizon bright with promise. They spoke of future plans with optimism, acknowledging the lessons learned from the shadows of deceit. Together, they stepped into a new day, not forgetting the past, but using it as the soil in which to grow a future rich with hope and understanding. A future where the pain had been acknowledged, the truths embraced, and where mother and son could walk forward united.